You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling a vibe. Yeah. Give thanks to the Father, I'm breathing alive.
Culture and Flavor is a podcast about food and culture centered in Black and Indigenous foodways, hosted by myself, Zella Palmer, right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each episode features high vibrational conversations with cultural bearers, chefs, farmers, scholars, barbecue pit masters, and more. Where there is flavor, there is history. Join me on Culture and Flavor and all of my guests as we share stories that will have you praise dancing, cooking, conjuring, and inspiring your culinary journey. Welcome to another episode of Culture and Flavor with your host, Zella Palmer. So today, y'all, let's ground this conversation in telling the history of baking in New Orleans, which I find a fascinating story. And a lot of people don't know that the majority of slaveholders in New Orleans were not individual owners. They were businesses, enterprises, or factories. And to keep up with the insatiable appetite of the elite class of New Orleans and tourists, baking was one of the most prized professional skills and a huge part of antebellum New Orleans food culture. In Nouvelle Orleans, or New Orleans, the planter class did its best to recreate the bread and confectionery treats of Paris. Bakers were revered, and one popular baker franchise was Dakin, I think it is, Bakery, and they held 47 enslaved bakers, according to an article in 64 Parishes magazine. There were highly skilled enslaved cooks and bakers that were sold up to $5,000 in comparison to field hands for $500. So when I met pastry chef Kaitlin Guerin many years ago, I was excited to see her pay homage to our benevolent ancestors in her bakery, Lagniappe Bakehouse, in New Orleans Central City neighborhood. Now, the other day I went with my daughter and she said, "Ma, let's go early because you know they sell out fast." And y'all, I haven't had croissants like that since I was in Paris. Every croissant, cookie, sandwich melts in your mouth, and you know that she is using that bougie butter. So all jokes aside, love is in the details. And just sitting there with my daughter and looking at the tile and seeing images of what appeared to be faces of those bakers, those praline candy makers, the Kala ladies, even the Cafe Brûlot cups on display made me smile. In our industry, we are nerds, we are artists, we are lovers of history. We bless spaces when our past relatives couldn't. Now that I've met Kaitlin many years ago and immediately we hit it off, we are dancers and dancers know dancers. Even if we are not at the bar anymore, our posture is always straight, our neck is always elongated, and we somehow find a way to stand in first position. We know how to float across the room. We appreciate beauty and culture. And I knew when I met Kaitlin that I met a kindred spirit. So for my guests who aren't familiar with Chef Kaitlin Guerin, let me tell you about her. She was a trained dancer who would later attend the pastry program at the Culinary Institute of America. She has previously worked in Michelin-star kitchens in Denmark and California. She began her pastry pop-up, Lagniappe Baking, during the pandemic, selling exquisite yet nostalgic pastry boxes that celebrate and reconnect the Black foodways of the South through local and seasonal ingredients. Lagniappe Bakehouse, the Central City bakery and cafe that she and her life and business partner, Lino Asana, who is actually a previous featured guest on our last season, they opened in September 2024, and they have been taking off since. And just so you all know that lagniappe is a term used in Louisiana to mean a little something extra. So sometimes she gives us a little something extra, and I appreciate that so much. It's so sweet. But Kaitlin was named one of Louisiana's Cooking magazine's chefs to watch in 2021. And she won the 2022 Star Chefs Rising Stars Pastry Chef Award and is a member of the Les Dames d'Escoffier New Orleans chapter. And she was a 2025 James Beard Award nominee for Emerging Chef. So since opening the bakehouse, she has received Eater New Orleans 2024 Best New Bakery Award and was featured in Vogue, Condé Nast Traveler, and was listed in New York Times 2024 Best Bakeries across the U.S. right now. I couldn't agree more. Welcome to Culture and Flavor. Welcome to Culture and Flavor, Kaitlin.
Thank you so much, Zella, for having me. Thank you for that beautiful intro. I just learned so much as well about our previous New Orleans history in baking. I need to go back and do my research. That was so inspirational. Wow.
Oh, thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll get into the details about Lagniappe Bakehouse because I want to hear everything. Because I mean, just sitting there as a patron, and I came with my daughter, last week, and it was just so cool just to see even just little details that you all seem intentional to put in the bakery so that people can learn and ask questions, even the books that you all have on display. But we'll get to that. But let's start from the beginning. So growing up in New Orleans, and it's always the saying pre-Katrina, So what are your earliest memories of food?
Yes, yes, pre-Katrina memories. Oh, I mean, I have a picture of me as a baby sitting in the kitchen sink in the island with a slice of king cake in front of me. So I was
Mm,
maybe 2 or 3 years old, maybe where I could still fit in the sink. But obviously that's not a memory I hold, but I think it's very relevant. I grew up in the kitchen with my mom. She learned to cook from her father, who taught all of their children how to cook. So it was just innate that we were, in the kitchen growing up. And I used to sometimes complain about it. We couldn't go out on Sundays until we did our chores, and our chores were helping prep, Sunday dinner. But
mm,
obviously, I look back on it now, and that was some of the very informal and informative, excuse me, times of my life growing up, spending time cutting Trinity, helping make gumbo, clean crabs, clean shrimp, just make all these things that now I understand why I was there. And I continue to try to hold those traditions. We still all do as a family.
mm. And it's we mentioned king cake, and I somebody recently told me because my kids are grown now, almost grown, and I remember just raising them here, and around Mardi Gras season, it was always a joy to they were so excited to bring king cakes to school,
Hmm.
and whoever got the baby, would have to buy the cake. And so I recently found out that, they don't allow that anymore in many charter schools in New Orleans. And it's heartbreaking to me, And
Oh.
that tradition of baked goods and even just the loss of not even seeing praline ladies sell, pralines throughout the quarter or on the ferry, we're
Hmm.
losing a lot of our baking history, but here you come. Here you come. So I nerd
Mhm.
out sometimes when we talk about our previous lives as dancers and how it felt to do jetés for hours or practice at the bar. And for me, there was nothing like Martha Graham, Catherine Dunham, even just classical ballet. So tell us about the chapter in your life when you trained as a dancer and how did it prepare you for your life experience now?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it did. They're all relevant. And I don't think I would be here without the previous dance experience that I had. I grew up in New Orleans public school, charter school. I went to a performing arts school, and by the third grade, we had to pick an art. I chose dance because my friends were in that class and it looked like fun to me. And later, maybe 1 or 2 years in, I realized this is really what I want to do. And my parents were so supportive of me wanting to build a dance career or a career around dance. And I knew at a very early age, maybe by end of, like middle school. I'm getting into high school. So I went through the performing arts program at my high school and graduated with this sort of like mini degree in dance and performing arts. I went to undergrad to study dance in upstate New York at Skidmore, which was at the time as well one of the a really great program for modern dance specifically. I wanted to do modern and contemporary dance, so I studied at Skidmore, and then that's when before I graduated, I attended Alonzo King Lines's summer intensive in San Francisco, and decided from there that I wanted to continue my professional career in dance in the Bay Area. So I moved to California after I graduated undergrad and performed here and there with smaller companies and contract gigs, doing mostly modern dance. I got a little bit into some house movement and dance, which was new for me at the time too, but was still training, was still moving. But at the time, you're working, you're young, you're an artist, you're working in San Francisco. I worked a lot of odd jobs between driving for Lyft and Instacart shopping and all these things. I was a nanny, just all these things that I had to do to support myself. But I found myself stress baking as a way to relieve anxieties about trying to get jobs and, just trying to find out where my career would stand in performing arts. And it didn't take long, but I had this sort of strange epiphany one day that, if I were to pursue a career in pastry, that maybe it would work out for me because I love precision, I love accuracy, I love science. I never got to do these things, at least yet in my career. I had planned on getting into physical therapy and injury prevention for dancers. That was a field I was trying to work out after I did a few more years of performance. But I decided to sort of shift gears and keep that science component of it, at least in research, and sort of jump full in and try a completely different career path. So I got a job as a pastry assistant at a restaurant in Oakland and in Berkeley rather, and immediately fell in love with it. Like I was just
Mm,
like, this is meant for me all along. I don't know, where this was, but it was here. I understand cooking to a degree, but baking and pastry are very, very different. Not too long after I fell in love with that job, I went to tour at the Culinary Institute of America in Napa. Fell in love with their program, was promised that I could study abroad, which was something that I also missed in undergrad that I really wanted to do, but I couldn't because of my dance major. So I said, "Sign me up. I'm here for it," and I haven't really looked back since. But I will say, and we might touch on this too, but I'm still moving. I think much like how you are and how we've talked about too, like you can't escape dance, right? And
mm-mm,
to put the two together, they're very parallel, working in the food industry is a different sort of movement in itself. And I'm finding so much in common with it and so much that's different from having kinesthetic awareness in space. You're in a kitchen, you need to understand where you are in space and where people are around you, to just like you're performing. I'm standing in front of a counter, I'm talking to guests. That is the performative aspect for me when it's really just hospitality. It's even just injury prevention and taking care of your body because you're standing on your feet for hours throughout the day. There's so much involved in it. And I think the movement portion itself is expressive by way of like physical movement and also movement through food, right? There's so much movement in food artistically, creatively, through ingredients, through like actual plating that I keep finding different ways to express movement that I still have for myself, but
mhm.
throughout food. And it's very beautiful. It's very like humbling to still say that I can move, my body can still move, but I'm here doing food work, you know?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Well, you truly express it in each pastry that you put out. I mean, it's so much it's so graceful and, like, there's so much love in each pastry, and I just know, like, knowing you and then just, like, your whole persona, your aura, I would say. I know that you're a dancer then in doing this, and I think that's what makes it extra special. So it always makes me sad that average Americans only have access to limited baked goods. Not even franchise coffees do bread or pastry right.
Mm.
So you mentioned that you went to Europe, and one thing I will say about Europe is they don't play about their pastries. They don't play about bread, and it is always a pleasure as an American to have good bread over there. And it makes me sad every time we come, you could get back in the States, and then you're paying premium price for some of these baked goods and these so-called franchise coffee shops, and the bread is awful. The croissants are awful. They're like hard as a brick. So what did you
Mhm.
learn about European pastry making in Europe?
Yeah, it is foremost and will always be the ingredients. It's the ingredients. I mean, it's the same way how we talk about, like, well, you can't make gumbo the same way in California or New York because the water is different, or you can't make New York bagels in New Orleans because the water is different. It's the same thing. It's ingredients and this, I mean, we can learn the technique of viennoiserie, of combining dough and butter together in many, many layers, all we want, and perfect it in any way, but the quality of the ingredients is really what makes it, from how I've understood it. I mean, I think that it's very easy to source certain things in the States, but to consistently use them, when you are increasing your quantity in a bakery setting, regardless, you're going to have to sacrifice quality. And I think that's something that we're really proud of, at least right now, to say that I'm able to keep the quantity small, not for long. This has to change very soon. We're trying to expand quickly, but you can't, I don't think I could ever sacrifice the quality of the ingredients. And we're sourcing European butter from Normandy for the croissants, and making sure we're using fresh yeast, which is really hard to find in the States. People do not use fresh yeast. We use dry yeast here. And just paying careful attention. There's also something very specific in croissants with the number of folds that you do that obtains like the final number of layers you'll have. And croissants are trending again. I think the trends that ebb and flow from them are like the number of layers that you put in there. So now that they're trending again, like less layers are more trendy. But in I'm finding in New Orleans, in a place that's very hot and humid, we might need more layers, and that equates to taste and quality. So that's another component too. But that's a lot of science and and bakery and pastry, stuff that I'm happy to talk further into.
Well, keep on going because I know my listeners love it.
Yeah, okay, so, happily. Well, I mean, also we know, baking in New Orleans is not easy because of the heat and humidity, and I didn't think it would be that difficult. I'm like, "Yeah, open a bakery, it's fine. Work with yeast and butter all you want in a hot house that is not properly insulated for this work. It's fine." But it really does make a difference. Having the difference of 33 layers in a croissant versus the classic 55 layers is the difference of like a very flaky croissant, or less flaky, but it's sort of bready, but it still has distinct layers. You can see it won't crumble and make a mess on your clothes, but it holds up against the humidity a lot better than a less, layered croissant would. So there's so many different nuances to one extra fold when you're doing a croissant that I'm learning are making the biggest difference. And I tried my best to do a lot of R&D, but now that we're open and we're in it and we really can't slow down right now, it's like hard. So we sort of stuck with what we have, and I'm happy with the product right now, where it's just sort of like tweaking the recipe for summer versus winter, and that is also, ugh, it's a
Mm.
lot, but, that's the work that we love to do. I love trying to figure it out. These croissants drive me crazy, but that's why I'm doing this business, is because I love trying to figure this work out.
And that's why there's a line every Saturday
Yeah.
down the street nearly, and I think we in New Orleans really appreciate a good croissant, because we have a history of baking in the city. And I am just I don't even eat. I stopped eating croissants, and to be honest, and I just couldn't eat them anymore. I mean, you come from Paris and you're just like, oh no. Once you
Yeah.
try a croissant from France, it's a wrap. You're never gonna eat, little croissant sandwiches at the fast food.
Never.
Never, And so I'm so nerding out on what you said about the 33 versus 55. I mean, who knew? So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember also being with Chef Tanya Holland when she was in town at an event here, and you were featured, and you were the pièce de résistance. You
Mm.
made this shortening bread that was a foot long, layered with a strawberry compote, then topped it with edible flowers and fresh whipped cream. And then she's just elegantly laying just placing them so effervescently. The flowers, the edible flowers. I said, Lord, look at this woman. She is divine. What is going on? I was like, yes, sis. And, so when I do get a chance to go to Lagniappe, some of my favorites are the pecan croissant when you have that. I mean, oh my God, y'all, that is mind blowing. And the pistachio cookie. I love the pistachio cookie, and it always has my foot thumping. And, when I think about also your homage, you pay homage sometimes to Africa and some because your partner is from the Cameroon, Lino, who was on a previous episode. So I love a good love story, and I would love to talk about how did your partnership teach and ground you to develop recipes that told your stories of being native to New Orleans, and also paying homage to his ancestry and his heritage in the Cameroon or the continent of Africa as well.
Yeah. That's great. Oh, I love. I'm thinking about all of these beautiful memories that he and I have, like very early on conversations. And quite honestly, it started with the Creole Feast, with the book from Nathaniel Burton, that was sort of this very mind shifting, or like altering, or pivotal point for Lino's career in film and for my career in food as well. At the time that we discovered that this book existed, I was still dancing in San Francisco. He's working on a short film. Our family friends who live back here in New Orleans had this book, and I remember he and I come back home, we're looking at it, we're reading it together, and he's just like, there's so many similarities between New Orleans and West Africa, which we all know, right? But I think for us discovering it in our early 20s together was just very pivotal and very necessary for the work that he and I both do now. So that happened, I want to say, maybe 8 or 9 years ago now. We've been together for 11 or so years. And it was multiple conversations traveling back to New Orleans for him to understand the food culture of Creole food, even of Cajun food, and for me relearning and re-understanding my roots, necessary ingredients here, and just sort of the foodways of the South. That has now become, sort of the ethos or the philosophy of Lagniappe Bakehouse. That when we sat down and decided that it was time for me to take my little pop up and turn it into an actual brick and mortar, that the basis for everything really needed to be rooted and grounded in these ingredients that are connecting us back to the continent. And it is directly rooted in our relationship, right? But it's directly rooted in my roots, being a Black woman, who, I have Creole roots. My family is from Louisiana. These are deep roots that we hold, and even back to Cameroon itself and to Nigeria, to Senegal. As I'm learning and understanding my family's roots, that these ingredients and these sort of stories were always there. I didn't have the key, to understanding where it all came from until he and I got together over this book. And through years of conversation, through him documenting, and sort of preserving the legacy of Black chefs in New Orleans, which is a beautiful project, that he's working on, that we've really bonded over, understanding the rich culture and history of New Orleans food.
Mm. Y'all, when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation after a few messages from our advertisers. Hit that subscribe button, share this episode, and we're going to talk about some of those ingredients that Kaitlin and our business partner Lino, they share with us the patrons. I mean, we get to try these amazing croissants, and I think Benet cookies too. I mean, oh my God. So we'll talk about that when we get back. Thanks for listening to Culture and Flavor.
This episode is brought to you by Plugra European-style butter, crafted for those who demand precision and exceptional results in the kitchen. With 82% butter fat and a slow churn process, Plugra gives you flakier crusts, fluffier cakes, and rich, melt-in-your-mouth pastries. Because great baking starts with great butter. Unlike standard American butters, which have only 80% butter fat, Plugra ensures the ideal moisture and fat balance so your recipes turn out just right every time. That's why professional chefs trust Plugra and home bakers love it. Plugra's slow churn process creates a smooth, creamy butter that gives dough a soft, pliable texture, making rolling, folding, and laminating effortless. Whether you're perfecting a buttery pie crust or layering a delicate croissant, Plugra helps you bake with confidence. Experience the difference for yourself. Find Plugra in stores near you or visit plugra.com. That's Plugra.com.
Okay, we're back. So let's get into the ingredients. You mentioned that in the first part of our interview, and I would love just for you to talk about some of the ingredients, because I remember seeing Benet seeds in one of your one of your pastries. But I would love for you just kind of talk about how you really started with the recipe development, and how do you decided, like, these are the certain dishes that I want to offer, and I'm telling a story through these pastries and these croissants.
Yeah. I wrote a list of all of the ingredients that I could think of that I grew up eating. Um, a lot of them were very much savory ingredients. I mean, I grew up eating some, classic New Orleans desserts, but a lot of it was pies and rum cakes and things that my mom loved to cook, or bake rather. But I wrote down this list of ingredients that I feel speak or tell the story of New Orleans, through way of sweets or of pastries and desserts. And then similarly, Lino has a list of West African ingredients that we feel like work really well in tandem with pastry. And so some of those things are pecans, stewed syrup, sweet potatoes, moringa, which was new for me, but we found a lot of connection between that ingredient. Bene seeds, through the Carolinas, chicory, even, and coffee itself as an ingredient, through our coffee program as well. That's a separate ingredient on its own. Bay leaves, oh my gosh, fresh bay leaves are so beautiful and so flavorful. And then a lot of seasonal produce items that I love from the farmer's market. Figs right now, like berries, Louisiana strawberries are by far the best strawberries I've ever tasted in the world. And that's not an exaggeration, right?
Facts.
Yes. You know, buttermilk, Creole tomatoes, cornmeal, even hibiscus. Not something I grew up using, but has found our way back into our foodways. And then from the West African standpoint, there are a couple of ingredients that we are now highlighting in our pastry items: the grains of paradise and alligator pepper, which are both a spice under the same family. And this alligator pepper has hundreds of variations, one of which is the grains of paradise. In our application, it's like a sweeter, licorice forward tasting spice. And then the alligator pepper itself is spicy. It sort of has like a Szechuan pepper, sort of like tongue numbing, sensation. But these are ingredients that are very delicious, on their own, but have found their way into the pastries.
Now that I know this, I know what to get you next time I go on a trip abroad. Remember, just bring back spices,
Yes.
I'm definitely going to do that. I definitely, because I was thinking about a previous Dr. Guido Marcel, and I definitely the laurel bay leaf is different from West Indian bay leaf, and the West Indian bay leaf has so much potent flavor. So I'm curious to see when next time I'm do something where I'm abroad or something, I'm definitely going to bring you back some spices just to see what you feel about it. So yes,
I
yay,
love
exciting.
that. Yes. Thank you.
Exciting. But I know every pastry, y'all. I mean, wow. I'm not saying that just, I'm saying that with sincere honesty. Like it is amazing. And you recently returned from the James Beard Awards in Chicago, your
Yeah.
first time being nominated. And I have to say, I saw the pictures and you were stunning. I mean, I was there, full disclosure, I was there. But you were giving Carmen de Lavalade. I mean,
Oh,
immediately when I saw you, I was like, oh my God, Carmen de Lavalade. I was waiting for Joffrey Holder to come out
oh,
into from the stage from behind the stage and say, oh, fabulous, darling, fabulous.
oh my
And I
God.
was so proud of you. I was proud of the Chase family for receiving
Mm,
American Classic. I mean, and Nina Compton going on the stage and presenting, Serene going up there and presenting. I mean, it was a night, I think, full circle for a lot of, New Orleanians, who live
mhm,
here, just to be a part of that. And I was really proud of especially such powerful women from New Orleans who represent centuries old recipes. And it made me want to praise dance. So I have to say that. What did you feel? I mean, when you were nominated, I mean, it was an incredible moment, I'm sure, for you, in a full circle moment. What were you thinking?
Ooh, I I really couldn't believe it. I remember getting a text message from Cheryl Day, back in
Mm,
the day bakery. Amazing, amazing. I'm just gonna call it, has become my mentor. Has been like, please call me anytime you need anything. She said, congrats on the semifinalists. And my heart dropped. I was just like, what?
hmm,
I really couldn't believe it because I still feel very new in the industry, right?
mm,
And I think that's when a lot of like imposter syndrome takes over, and
mm,
we all have to talk ourselves out of that negative thought. And so I was just like, wow, I couldn't believe this. I was so happy. I was so nervous. I was so nervous. I don't know why I was so nervous,
mm,
so anxious. But I felt so proud, and the timing with which it happened, just it felt very necessary. Like, our for our family, like we needed this good news, just
mm.
in terms of like where our mental health was. Like we really needed this, and
Yeah.
it was wild. It was so wild. I mean,
Mm,
that was just my finalist. So when I got the message for that I made it to finalists, I couldn't believe it. That was like, we're
mm.
going to Chicago. Like, that was when you were like, get your outfit ready.
I know, like, what you gonna wear? Like,
What
you're
are
like,
you
I
gonna
don't
wear?
know. I'm too busy making croissants. I don't know.
Literally up until the final hour, up until the final hour. But Wow, I felt so proud to
Mm,
represent, to represent myself, to represent the business, to
mhm,
represent New Orleans this year, to be a finalist. I really understand. I'm so proud of the people that I know in the industry who have made it to this point. And now I
mm,
know so many more having attended the awards and met so many amazing chefs and folks in the industry. But like to watch Serene and to watch Dakar go from emerging chef
mhm,
to best new restaurant. I mean, I cried, when he won. I
mhm,
was so proud that I understand how it feels now. And I'm just sitting here being like, this is just the beginning. We're just getting
yeah,
started. It felt very humbling to be there and to be at the awards, to
mhm,
know where I came from. But I'm just like, this is the beginning. That's what emerging chef is. You're just getting started. I want to show everybody so much more of what I know and what I believe I have to offer.
mm.
So this is the beginning.
And it's always fascinating to me, like, when I watch some of the television shows where, they have to compete and a chef has to put out a pastry. Now it seems like they always struggle with, making pastries. And I wanted to ask you, what can pastry chefs teach, classically trained chefs?
Ooh. Ooh, I mean, if we're talking in terms of if we're working in real time and it's either on a food competition show or in service, I can't teach you patience in that moment because you don't have time, right?
Mm,
But patience really is a virtue, and being patient and understanding time management. Not to say that, savory chefs don't have time management skills. I think that's a skill that we all have to acquire, but having the patience for the work that you're doing is so important, and also understanding when to stop if you're headed in a not so great direction. but
mhm,
but before
mhm,
you go and ruin something, but just to really read, like, you are listening. Your life is that pastry. You're listening to it. It's literally a living, breathing product because it has yeast in it. So
mm,
I'm every day I'm like, well, what does the croissant need today? What is the
mm,
croissant trying to tell? What is this bread trying to tell me today? And you're really listening to it. Um, I think that when we're cooking, we're listening, we're using all of our senses in the same way. But I'm finding that I'm really having to trust my, I'm trying to think of a good word outside. I can't, I'm just really trying to just understand that I'm have to in this moment, give my life to this product that is trying to show me what it needs. Does it need 15 more minutes in the proofer? Does it need, 30 more seconds in the oven? It is really to get that perfect crumb, to get that perfect honeycomb structure. And this is just talking about croissants,
mhm,
yeah, you are listening to that living, breathing product. And I know we can say that in the savory applications, but I don't think in the same way that you can with a pastry product in that way.
mm. Is there a particular pastry that you think tells represents you, that you love, that you like, "This is Kaitlin on a plate"?
Ooh, wow. Oh gosh, that's hard because there's a lot of them, and I think right now it might not even be an item that is on our menu.
Mm,
I think it would be some version of that strawberry shortcake that you mentioned, that when
mhm,
you and Chef Tanya had at Paradigm.
mm,
And that's because it speaks to my past life, growing up in the kitchen with my mom, and it's
mm,
nostalgic for me. It's something that I could take, and I understood how to break it down, twist it and reverse it in Denmark and in California, and then bring it back home to New Orleans and recreate it in a way that I would have never thought possible when I was eating that product, eating that
mm,
dessert when I was 5 years old. And, growing up strawberry shortcake, we would always have it at the end of strawberry season. You know, you go to Strawberry Festival in Ponchatoula, you come back with all your strawberries. Mom macerates them. We get those little store-bought angel loaf cakes, slice them up, get the whipped cream from the freezer or from the can, and that's your dessert, you know. And now I've taken it, and what it is for me is a cornmeal cake or a strawberry cornmeal cake with an herb flavored cream, whether it's fig leaf or bay leaf, or even I've tried curry leaf cream, you know, beautiful macerated strawberry jam. Maybe it's pickled strawberries, maybe it's pickled strawberry jam, maybe it's got a black pepper component to it for a little spice, you know. And then it's got some lemon zest on top, or even just like a fresh sprinkle of bene seeds. It's so it can take you in so many directions, but it's just so grounded, and obviously using fresh seasonal ingredients, it's gonna be so delicious no matter how you have it.
Oh my God, I'm sure know you're making our audience mouth salivate. So, and it's so true, it's so good, y'all. But are you thinking about, getting in the king cake business every year? Because I know that's a competitive business. You know, everybody in New Orleans is big on king cake. So that moment is like, woo. You know,
Oh,
Everyone goes to Dong Fong or the other. And I remember when Sucre was open. I mean, a lot of folks went there too. I went there too. And
mhm.
now, are you thinking, oh, what about a strawberry king cake? Ooh,
Oh.
you're just daydreaming.
It has been done. I
Ooh.
did a strawberry, maybe even a couple years ago, roasted strawberry king cake. You know, the king cake season, I'm learning every year, no matter how much you can prepare for it, you're never prepared for it. And everybody starts asking you in November, "Are you ready for king cake season? Are you ready for king?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Am I?" I don't
Ah.
But, we promise folks every time, and then we sadly cannot deliver that. I would love to ship, um,
Mhm.
even a small batch of king cakes. I was on Erin French's show, um, oh my gosh, The Lost Kitchen, and she came to New Orleans during Mardi Gras, and it featured the king cake, and so you can imagine people from all over the states are asking, "Are you shipping king cake?" And the logistics of it are really complicated, and something that I'm not ready to get into, because
Mhm.
you don't want to sacrifice the integrity of your final product by tossing it, you know, halfway across the states, and then who knows how long it took to get there. Or I've seen and heard so many horror stories of, you know, just it could never, it never goes the way you want it to.
Mm.
But to in the way that we're hoping to increase our production for next year's king cake season, um, I just got to cross my fingers and say a prayer every day that it's going to work out,
Mhm.
because it's not easy. We This past year being open and with all the accolades at the time, all of our king cake pre-sales immediately sold out, and it was so overwhelming. We were not properly staffed. We didn't have the proper equipment. I'm borrowing cake pans from baker friends, just like trying to keep up, you know. So now I know for next year, and I would imagine next year I'm going to have the same problem. But either way, um, the long answer is yes. I
Mm.
am trying to get into king cakes, but the logistics behind it are very difficult. That it's you really have to run out of a commissary kitchen to do it properly.
Mhm. Well, take your time because, I mean, you just open. And I'm sure, everyone's just so excited, because you are an incredible baker. And to have that in New Orleans is huge. I mean, people come from all over. I've seen the line is so diverse,
Mhm.
and, just take your time, and I love that, even just the atmosphere and the decor of Lagniappe, it's bright. The music, you're playing Afrobeats, it calms your nervous system down. And I would love to kind of just talk about, um, your thought process, and you and Lino deciding like this is how we want to design this space, and what are we trying to invite, or what are we trying to tell through the decor that we chose, and the tiles on the bake area. It's just so cool to me. And then even just outside, just sitting outside in the garden area, I mean, it's beautiful. What were you
Yeah.
thinking? What were you all thinking? How are you all intentionally making, Lagniappe an inviting place for everyone?
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a location first, sort of decided the rest of it, and we looked over this location a couple of times. It's located in Central City, New Orleans, which historically, right off of Aretha Castle Haley, which had been Dryads before, but this was a street, in the 50s and 60s where it was a safe haven for Black and brown folks to shop at small businesses. And one of those folks apparently was my grandfather, who worked on Aretha Castle Haley, and I didn't find this out until we were definitely sure we were going to take this location. Um, and I was unsure about opening a bakery in Central City because I did not feel that my voice, as an up and coming Black female chef and baker, was strong enough to hold a location here where many people are not familiar with yet. We've seen this like economic resurgence of Central City of Aretha Castle Haley trying to bring itself together over the years. So I'm really happy that we got here and that we renovated this beautiful house. There's a lot of history in it that we're learning too. That a Black family, multi-generational family, lived here up until Katrina, and they come back and they visit and they're in tears that they just can't believe that this house has transformed into this beautiful safe space and bakehouse. So that is now within the storytelling of the space. So um, as we acquired the house, we already sort of knew, and a lot of it really, I have to give props to Lino. A lot of it is, like you said, very intentional. Of We wanted it to be a Black space. We wanted it to have historical information and content, but also to highlight friends and artists that we want to feature. So our good friend Junebug helped us with these tiles that you're talking about, hand painted tiles that sort of highlight the story of foodways throughout New Orleans and into jazz music. You've got Aretha Castle Haley's painted picture, watermelon, fig, satsuma, tomato, and then we put one into the wall that is a Mardi Gras Indian, because I think you can't tell the story of New Orleans culture without a Mardi Gras Indian component. We also have his highlighted piece. It's a portrait of his mother, looking out of the window, and it's got these like beautiful earthy tones that are really setting the space, but just sort of guiding your eye to look out and to be connected in the house, but also, like you said, set your intentions going out, looking into the courtyard, being outside. The front yard rather, sits under this very old oak tree. We don't know how old it is. Some people say 300 years old. I'm assuming at least over 120 years old. Um, and it's providing shade and comfort for all of the patrons to sit outside and enjoy. But at the end of the day, what we wanted was a house, which we were so lucky to find, that had character, that you walk in and you feel like you're at home. or that you're walking in and you feel like you're at your mother's house and you want to, act in that way of like feeling like you're being taken care of. It's like, oh, you need to eat something. Like, what do you want to eat? Like, I got you. What do you want to drink? Like, I have to feed you. This sort of like very nostalgic experience that I think we all have in New Orleans growing up. Going to my grandmother's house, just even coming back home when I lived away. Just that is the most important feeling that I want people to come in and feel like it's just a safe space.
And you and Lino are truly creating community. I have to say that. And I'm just so proud of you. I want to congratulate you, for being nominated. This is just the beginning. And y'all, I'm going to share two personal stories, of how Kaitlin personally touched me. And I know she's touched many others in a short amount of time. One, my parents died back to back. My dad died over COVID, the pandemic. And I wanted, after it was like a year after he passed, and I just wanted to just dance it out. I just wanted to just play music as loud as I possibly could, have a potluck, invite friends just so I could celebrate their anniversary, because my mom died too. And so I was really grieving. And, what do dancers do? And what do Leos do? We dance it
Mm.
out. And so I just said, I'm going to invite everyone I know and whoever wants to pull up and, bring something. And you asked me specifically, what did your dad um, like? I said he loved pecan pie from Rouse's. Every time he came from every year for Christmas, he would come here to New Orleans and make us go get some Rouse's and his eggnog.
Mhm.
And I can't remember the brand, but it's the same brand in the green bottle that a lot of Evan Williams or something like that. And he would drink his eggnog and he would just smash that pecan pie almost to himself. And my mother would be screaming at him because he had diabetes.
Oh.
And you made this pecan pie and, we ate it at the anniversary celebration because it was New Year's Day when they got married. And that really moved me and touched me. And I know my kids were also grateful for that. And everyone who knew my parents, my cousins who were there as well. It meant a lot, to just eat that pie. And then another time, my daughter had just come back. She travels all over the world. She does amazing things. And I wanted her to, have some type of vegan birthday cake, and you were like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to do it. And you did it. And she couldn't stop raving about it. And to have her back home and for Lagniappe to be a place where she also feels like she's invited and is part of my family of friends, in this beautiful city of New Orleans. I want to thank you so, so, so much for that, those special moments.
Those are so beautiful, and I'm really happy that you share those memories too, because that pie is actually one of my favorite pies to eat too. So I love that we have that connection over it. I don't eat a lot of the food that I make anymore.
Mm,
I can't, but I love that pie.
mm,
And I love being challenged, and making vegan desserts is something that I would love to incorporate into the space. So any chance that I get to try something out, I'm always, happy to do that. And it's funny, I was talking with someone the other day about cake ladies. I don't know if you're probably familiar with the cake lady, right? And
mhm.
I asked my mom, I said, "Oh, we didn't really have a cake lady in our neighborhood growing up. I grew up in the East." She said, but I used to always spend time at her parents' house, and we had the frozen cup lady, or my mom even was a little bit of the cake lady at church, and she was like, "Caitlin, now you're the cake lady."
You
We're
are.
past the baton on. You are the cake lady. I said, "Oh gosh, I
You
guess so.
are.
I guess so. If Yep, I have to claim it." So
Man, and shout out to you saying that and giving reverence to the cake ladies, the Kala ladies, the
Mhm.
praline ladies. I mean, there was a lady who lived across the street in my house, Miss Lindsay. She's still alive. She's almost 100 years old. She made all the cakes in the neighborhood,
Mhm.
and she would make this lemon cake that was to die for. And I finally was able to get the recipe from her. And, it just, those women, they deserve their flowers, and you are coming from a long line of those women. And I'm sure the family that own, the house where Lagniappe is now, and the Kala ladies, I mean, they're all smiling at you right now, Kaitlin. I'm
Mhm.
sure. I'm sure.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I really believe that like part of my mission now is to honor their legacy, and you can't talk about pastries in New Orleans, just like you mentioned at the start of the podcast, without referencing all of these beautiful influential women that some of their names we'll never know of. But it's definitely by way of the power of the baked goods, that we're here today talking about it.
Mm. Well, y'all, this is our last episode for this season. And I wanted to end it with Kaitlin because she represents so much of this beautiful city where I live, where I work, where I raise my children. And I'm so grateful to pastry chefs, everyone who came on this season, who I traveled to South Africa, whether it was in New Orleans, where it was in Grenada. I am so grateful for you all for tuning in, listening, subscribing to Culture and Flavor. I hope you enjoyed this season. My engineer, George, shout out to him for being available. Even after he had his firstborn child, he was still available to record and to edit and give advice. So I want to thank you all so much again for listening to Culture and Flavor. We're going to take a summer break and let us know what you think about Culture and Flavor. Let us know how you feel. Share, subscribe. And we appreciate everything that Heritage Radio Network is doing. So have a great summer, everyone.
I wake up in the morning and I feeling a vibe. Give thanks to the Father, I'm breathing alive.
Culture and Flavor is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org.